I never wanted this life. My father kept me far from it for as long as he could, making sure I went to the best schools, stayed in safe neighborhoods, and never got too close to the business. He was the lawyer for the DeLuca family, one of the most feared Mafia families in the city. But to me, he was just my dad, until the night I lost him. That night changed everything. I got the call at 11:47 p.m., a number I didn't recognize, a voice I didn't know. "Come to the docks," they said. "Your father's dead." I don't remember the drive. I just remember the way my hands shook on the wheel, the way my heartbeat pounded in my ears. By the time I reached the warehouse, I knew something was wrong, knew it deep in my bones. And then I saw them. 2 bodies on the concrete floor. One was my father. The other was Emilio DeLuca, the boss himself. Blood pooled around them, dark and glistening under the dim yellow light. The metallic scent of it hit me hard, making my stomach lurch. I fell to my knees beside my father, my fingers barely touching his coat. He was still warm. Someone had just done this. Footsteps echoed behind me. I turned, my heart in my throat. And that's when I saw him, Diego DeLuca. Diego DeLuca. He stood in the doorway, his broad frame blocking out the streetlights behind him. Dark hair, sharp jaw, and cold, unreadable eyes that had seen too much. I knew who he was. Everybody in the city did. Diego wasn't just the heir to the DeLuca empire, he was its enforcer, its weapon, its devil. And right now, his eyes were locked on me. "We have a rat," he said, voice like steel. "And we're going to find him." I should have walked away. I should have let the Mafia handle their own problems, taken my father's death as a warning, and disappeared. But as I stared at Diego, at the raw fury simmering beneath his calm mask, I realized we wanted the same thing. Justice, or maybe vengeance, maybe both. And that's how I found myself standing next to Diego DeLuca, promising to help him hunt down the traitor who sold out our fathers. The next few weeks were a blur of late-night meetings, whispered threats, and blood-stained money. Diego and I tore through the city, shaking down men who had once cowered before his father, tracing every last deal and lie that had led to that night at the docks. At first, Diego treated me like an outsider. "You don't belong in this," he said more than once. But I didn't back down. I learned quickly how to read people, how to tell when someone was lying, how to hold a gun without my hands shaking. And Diego noticed. The first time I got information he couldn't. He smirked at me. "You're good at this," he admitted. And just like that, I wasn't an outsider anymore. I was his partner. Something else was happening. I don't know when it started. Maybe it was the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. Maybe it was the way he stood a little closer than necessary, his hand hovering near the small of my back. Maybe it was the night he killed a man for me, the first time I saw Diego lose control. We were in an underground club, tracking one of our father's old associates, a man named Carlos. He was drunk, arrogant, and too confident for someone whose name had come up one too many times in our search. "You're Emilio's boy," Carlos sneered at Diego, taking a swig from his glass. "And you brought the lawyer's daughter. Cute." I didn't blink. "You were there that night, weren't you?" Carlos chuckled. "Maybe." Diego's jaw tightened. I stepped closer. "You knew they were walking into a trap." Carlos didn't answer, but his smirk said enough. Diego moved fast. Too fast. Before I could react, he had Carlos pinned against the bar, a gun pressed under his chin. "You think this is funny?" Diego growled, voice like ice. "You think I won't put a bullet in your skull right now?" Carlos laughed until Diego pulled the trigger. No hesitation. No second chances. The club fell silent as Carlos's body crumpled to the ground. Blood splattered against Diego's shirt, his hands, his face. He turned to me, his dark eyes searching mine, waiting, daring me to flinch. I didn't. I just reached forward, wiped a drop of blood from his cheek with my thumb and said, "We need to go." His lips parted slightly, surprise flickering across his face before he gave me a slow, dangerous smile. And that was the first time I realized I wasn't afraid of Diego De Luca. After that night, something shifted between us. It was in the way his gaze lingered when he thought I wasn't looking, the way his fingers brushed against mine when he handed me a gun, the way his voice softened, just barely, when he said my name. One night, after another long day chasing shadows, we found ourselves alone in the De Luca mansion. "You should go home," Diego said, leaning against the bar in his father's old office. I poured myself a drink instead. "I don't have a home anymore." He studied me, something unreadable in his expression. Then, without a word, he walked over and took the glass from my hand, setting it aside. His fingers traced the edge of my jaw, tilting my face up toward his. "You don't belong in this world, Angela," he murmured. "Neither do you," I whispered back. Something flickered in his eyes, and then he kissed me. Hard, desperate, like he was trying to drown out everything that had brought us here. I should have stopped him, should have reminded myself who he was. But I didn't. Because somewhere between chasing ghosts and spilling blood, I had fallen for Diego De Luca. And I think, in his own way, he was falling for me too. We found the rat 3 weeks later. It was one of Diego's own men, Rico, a man his father had trusted, a man who had stood at Diego's side since they were kids, and he had sold them out for money. Diego didn't hesitate. I was there when he pulled the trigger, watched as the betrayal bled out of Rico's body onto the floor. But it didn't feel like a victory, because when the dust settled, we weren't just partners anymore. We weren't just two people avenging our fathers. We were something else. Something dangerous. Something inevitable. With the traitors gone, there was no one left to challenge Diego. The De Luca family was his now. And by his side, I wasn't just the lawyer's daughter anymore. I was something more. I didn't know what we were yet. But as I stood beside Diego, watching him take his father's throne, I knew one thing for sure. We weren't done. Not by a long shot. The night Diego took over the De Luca family, the city held its breath. Word spread fast Emilio's son had found the rat, had dealt with him in the only way the Mafia understood. No mercy. No second chances. The other families watched carefully, some testing their alliances, others waiting for Diego to slip. He didn't, because I was there, making sure he didn't. People underestimated me. I wasn't just the lawyer's daughter anymore. I was the woman beside the new king. And that meant something. I handled the legal side of things, kept the police off our backs, negotiated deals before they turned into bloodbaths. And when words weren't enough, when men thought they could ignore a woman in a room full of killers, I reminded them exactly who I was. Diego let me, encouraged it even. "You like this, don't you?" he murmured one night as we stood in his office. A map of the city spread out before us. Our next moves laid out like a game of chess. I didn't deny it. "You do too," I countered, watching the way his fingers traced the edges of his whiskey glass, his eyes burning with something dark. His smirk was slow, dangerous. Maybe that's why we work so well together. We knew it wouldn't be easy. Taking over was one thing, keeping control was another. The other families still saw Diego as a young prince playing at being king, waiting for him to make a mistake. And someone was testing him. Small shipments went missing. Trusted men turned up dead. Messages were left coded threats only someone from the inside would understand. Someone still wants you dead, I told him one night as we sat on the rooftop of the DeLuca mansion, the city lights stretching out below us. Diego leaned back against the railing, cigarette between his fingers, the glow of it illuminating his sharp features. Let them try. His confidence was part of what made him so dangerous. But I saw the way his jaw tightened, the flicker of something in his eyes. He wasn't just fighting for power anymore. He was fighting to protect everything he had left. And that included me. The lines between business and something more blurred quickly. One night, after a long meeting that had ended in blood, I found myself alone in Diego's office, pouring myself a drink. My hands were still shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of it all. Diego walked in, his shirt stained with someone else's blood, his movements slow, calculated. "You shouldn't have been there tonight," he muttered, pouring his own drink, watching me from across the room. "I had to be," I said. He exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "Angela." I crossed the room before he could finish, grabbing the front of his shirt. "I'm not leaving, Diego." Something in him snapped then. His hands gripped my waist, his lips crashing against mine, a fire that had been simmering between us finally breaking free. It wasn't soft. It wasn't careful. It was everything we had been holding back for too long. And neither of us wanted to stop. Our enemies didn't stay quiet for long. A car bomb went off outside one of our clubs. A clear message. Diego didn't hesitate. "We're not playing defense anymore," he said the next night as we gathered our men, as we prepared for what came next. We weren't just taking over. We were going to burn down anyone who stood in our way. And this time, I wasn't just the lawyer's daughter. I was the queen standing beside the new king. And together, we were unstoppable. The war came fast and brutal. It wasn't just business anymore. It was survival. For weeks, blood stained the streets, and bodies dropped faster than we could clean them up. Diego moved like a ghost, striking before anyone saw him coming, leaving behind nothing but destruction. And I was right beside him, handling the legal mess, pulling strings in the courts, making sure our empire didn't crumble under the weight of the chaos. But war has a price, and we paid it. It was someone close. We should have known. A meeting was set neutral ground, a final negotiation to end the bloodshed. Diego and I arrived first, surrounded by men we thought were loyal. But the second we stepped inside, I saw it, the flicker of hesitation, the glances exchanged, the subtle shift in the air. A setup. A dozen guns turned on us, and standing at the head of it all was Mateo Vargas, one of Diego's oldest allies. "Business is business," he said, casual, like he wasn't about to kill us both. "You knew it had to end this way." Diego didn't hesitate. In a second, he had his gun out, and I followed. The room exploded in gunfire. I don't remember how we made it out. All I remember is Diego grabbing my wrist, the warmth of his blood on my skin as we ran. By the end of the night, the war was over. Mateo was dead. The traitors were wiped out. And Diego, my Diego, stood at the top of it all, bruised, bleeding, but victorious. "You did it," I whispered when we were finally alone, standing in the DeLuca mansion, the empire finally ours. His. He turned to me, something unreadable in his eyes. "No, Angela. We did." He cut my face then, rough fingers brushing against my cheek, the fire between us burning hotter than ever. "This was never just mine," he murmured, "not without you." And then he kissed me slow, deep, nothing like the desperate nights before, This wasn't about escaping or surviving. This was something real. Ours. The DeLuca Empire stood stronger than ever. The city was ours. And by Diego's side, I wasn't just the lawyer's daughter anymore. I was his queen. And together we ruled.